Lemuel Gulliver had always dreamed of adventure. From the moment he could read, tales of distant lands and daring voyages filled him with wonder. As he grew older, it was this hunger for discovery that led him to study medicine, not to work in a quiet office, but to become a ship's doctor. The smells of salt water, the creak of wooden decks, the camaraderie of sailors, this was the life he had always imagined. And soon enough his curiosity led him aboard a merchant ship bound for parts unknown. Their mission was ordinary enough: trade goods, chart new territories, and return home wiser and richer than before. But to Gulliver, even the smallest corner of the world held possibilities for greatness. For weeks, their journey was calm, even pleasant. He spent evenings swapping stories of distant ports with rugged sailors under starlit skies. Life was peaceful, almost idyllic. And then, everything changed. The first sign was the gathering of dark clouds on the horizon. The winds whipped into frenzy, and waves rose like the walls of a fortress. The captain shouted for the crew to batten down the hatches and secure the cargo, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. The storm struck with a wrath no man had ever seen. Lightning clawed through the heavens, rain lashed like daggers against the sailor's skin. The ship groaned under pressure, its wooden frame no match for the fury of the sea. With a deafening crack, the mast snapped like a twig, sending splinters and torn sails cascading onto the deck. A massive wave surged toward them. Gulliver barely had time to grip the railing before it crashed over the entire ship, sweeping him into the cold, unforgiving sea. He fought to keep himself afloat, gasping for air as the ocean tossed him like a leaf in the wind. Darkness closed in around him, and his final memory was the booming of thunder and his strength fading as the waves dragged him under. When Gulliver awoke, the world had changed once again. He found himself lying on soft, warm sand beneath a gentle sun. Gone were the storm's fury and the merciless waves. Instead, the gentle sound of gulls and lapping tides greeted his ears. He tried to move, but his limbs refused to obey. Panic gripped him. Looking down, he realized his predicament. Tiny ropes bound his arms and legs. Even his hair was tied to the ground. "Am I dreaming?" he thought. But any hope of illusion vanished when he saw them. Hundreds of tiny figures, no taller than his finger. They wore ornate, colorful outfits and carried weapons no larger than sewing needles.
"He's awake."
A giant.
Gulliver stared, speechless. What could he say? Was this real, or had the storm driven him mad? Then, a man dressed in gold and bearing a crown stepped forward. His voice rang clear, small but commanding.
"I am the Emperor of Lilliput. You are in my kingdom. Obey our laws and do no harm, and we shall treat you well. Defy us and suffer the consequences."
Gulliver nodded, still stunned.
"I mean no harm."
His voice trembled the air around him. The Lilliputian crowd gasped at the sound, and some stepped back in fear. Over the coming days, Gulliver was introduced to their ways. The Emperor ordered his ropes untied, and the curious citizens welcomed him into their city. Everything was impossibly small, the houses like doll houses, the tallest spires barely reaching his knee. To them, he was a creature of amazement, a giant of myth and legend. They built him a makeshift platform to sit on and brought him tiny meals, enough to keep a full-grown man fed. But the peace of Lilliput would not last forever. One morning, the Emperor summoned Gulliver with grim news.
"Our enemies, the Blefuscudians, prepare for war. Their fleet approaches to attack. Giant, you have strength none of my people possess. Will you defend our kingdom?"
Though hesitant, Gulliver agreed. He didn't relish the thought of war, but his hosts had been kind, and he couldn't bear to see their fragile city fall. That night he waded into the sea, the water reaching only his waist. The Blefuscudian fleet, dozens of tiny ships, sailed toward him with soldiers shouting battle cries. Gulliver smiled. With a simple sweep of his hand, he collected all the ships, tying them together with a rope like a child gathering toys. Paralyzed with fear, the enemy surrendered instantly. Lilliput rejoiced at their victory, but shadows of doubt began to stir in the Emperor's court. "What if the giant turns against us?" whispered his advisors. "He is too powerful." The Emperor's trust began to erode, and soon there was talk of striking first, blinding Gulliver to keep him weak and manageable. Gulliver knew he had to leave. Under cover of darkness, he gathered supplies and finished the raft he had secretly been building. As dawn broke, he pushed away from the shores of Lilliput. The tiny kingdom shrank into the horizon as he floated toward freedom. Gulliver sighed, relieved but uneasy. What other wonders and dangers lay ahead in the vast expanse of the unknown sea? For now, his journey was far from over. Somewhere out there, another strange land awaited him.